أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مرج البحرين يلتقيان بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شأن فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. The Beneficent Allah. He taught the Quran. He created man, taught him the mode of expression. The sun and the moon follow a reckoning, and the herbs and the trees prostrate to him. And the heavens he raised them high, and he made them balance, that you may not inordinate in respect of measure, and keep up the balance with equality and not make any measure deficient. And the earth has it set for its living creatures. There is in fruit palms having shed clusters, and the grain with its husk and fragrance. Which then of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? He created man from dry clay with earthen vessels, and he created the jinn of flame and of fire. Which then of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? Lord of the east, Lord of the west, which is the bounty of your Lord that you will deny? He has made the two seas to flow freely so that they may meet together. Between them is a barrier which they cannot pass. Which then of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? There comes forth from the pearls both large and small. Then which of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? And his are the ships reared aloft in the sea like mountains. Which then of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? Everyone on it must pass away, and there will endure for every person of your Lord, the Lord of glory and honor. Which of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? All those who are in the heavens and the earth ask of him. Every moment he is in the state of glory. Which then of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? Soon we apply ourselves to you, O you two armies. Which then of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? O assembly of the jinn and of men, if you are not able to pass through the regions of the heavens and the earth, then pass through. You cannot pass through without authority. Then which of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? The flames of fire and smoke will be sent on you too, then they will not be able to defend themselves. Which of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? And then the heaven is sent asunder and becomes red like the red hide. Then which of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? Thank you.
Jazakallah khair to Basit for reciting and doing the translation to that beautiful surah. So without further ado, I introduce Dr. Tariq Ramadan. Tariq Ramadan is a professor of contemporary Islamic sciences at the Oxford University, Oriental Institute, St. Anthony's College, and also teaches at Oxford Faculty of Theology. He is visiting professor at the Faculty of Islamic Studies in Qatar, and Mundiapolis University in Morocco, and senior research fellow at Doshisha University in Kyoto, Japan. He holds an MA in philosophy and French literature and PhD in Arabic and Islamic studies from the University of Geneva. In Cairo, Egypt, he received one-on-one intensive training in classic Islamic scholarship from Al-Azhar University scholars. Through his writings and lectures, Tariq has contributed to the debate on the issues of Muslims in the West and Islamic revival in the Muslim world. He is active at academic and grassroots levels, lecturing extensively throughout the world on theology, ethics, social justice, ecology, interfaith, as well as intercultural dialogue. He is the president of European think tank, European Muslim Network in Brussels. His latest books include The Arab Awakening, Islam in the New Middle East, Penguin, The Quest of Meaning, Developing a Philosophy of Pluralism, and What I Believe, Radical Reform, Islam, Ethics, and Liberation, OUP USA. And without further ado, I introduce... Just kidding. I introduce Tariq Ramadan.
Ask you something. Assalamu alaikum. Why are you sitting so far? There is no come here. Just we can come closer. On my way. I'm very, very, very sorry to arrive at 10:30 almost when I was expected to be here at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. So I'm very sorry. Thank you for coming back. And I really want to thank the organizers, brothers and the sisters who were very, very committed and wanted this to happen. So, alhamdulillah, we are here. And we'll take, now we have, I don't know if we have time. I have time, so it's not a problem. We go for what is needed to talk about the topic, and if you want to widen the discussion on anything that you want, inshallah, we can do that. So there is the three things that are connected in our discussion is the Islamic principles, what we are experiencing in the West, and what is happening in the Muslim majority countries, and in which way we can articulate these three dimensions. Just as it's better, it's better. And this is better. Okay, try it like this. So, just to tell you something about the work I have been doing and in which way I'm trying to tackle these issues when it comes to our situation in the West. Is in fact, from the very beginning, what I decided is to work on in three different areas and fields. The first is, of course, the fundamentals of Islamic principles and thoughts and Islamic sciences. In fact, is what there is no Islamic theology. We don't have really theology in Islam, but we call it theology, meaning by this, it has to do with religion, legislation, principles, al-aqidah, al-fiqh, usul al-fiqh, the Islamic sciences. And I have allocated much of my time working on these fields and trying to get a better understanding and a deeper understanding of the principles of Islam, the objectives, and in which way we have to deal with them, what is immutable, what is changeable, what are the areas of ijtihad, and all that we know as classical Islamic sciences. The two other areas where one is Western societies and advocating something that it's part of my work that we are Western Muslims and that we live as Muslims in the West, that there is only one Islam that Islam accepts and integrates many cultures, so we can be Canadian, American, European, British, German, French Muslims. It means that we are Muslim by religion and French, British or Canadian and American by culture. So this is one other field which is Western Muslims, and the other one is really dealing with Muslim majority countries. What is happening? So the first book that I wrote for that about that is Western Muslim. It's not the first, by the way. It's the second. That the first to be translated is Western Muslims and the Future of Islam. No, that's wrong. That's the second field. It's Islam, the West, and the challenges of modernity, and discussion, Islam is discussion around dialogue around Islam, and then the last one, which is going to be published, it's already published in the UK, but it's going to be published in the States end of August, beginning of September, is Islam and the Arab Awakening. It's in which way the Arab Awakening should be or could be understood from Islamic, with Islamic ethics, dealing with Muslim majority countries. So these are the three areas, and the topic of today, when it comes to our Islamic principles and the way we have to deal with our situation in the West, is really to come back to the fundamentals. And the problem that I see very often when we speak as Western Muslims, even when we speak about ourselves, and when we are trying to explain what is happening or trying to understand what is happening in the Muslim majority countries, is because of the pressure, because of the reality of our time, we are very much on the defensive. So we explain the Islamic principles as if we are defending them. And the best way to avoid this is really to come to a completely different methodology, and in fact, a better understanding of the centrality of some of our principles that we have to put in our own understanding at the center of our Islamic tradition. And the first, and it's something for me which is important, and especially when we are in the West, is to really deeply understand the meaning of the Islamic spirituality. What do we mean by this? Because at the end of the day, what we are trying to do, what I'm trying to do when I say, hey, look, I'm a Muslim by religion, it's not only to find my place somewhere. It's not to find my place in the Western society or the American society. Before finding my place, I have to define myself. So defining myself is the very meaning of the spiritual teaching of Islam, which is who you are, what you want, where are you heading, what do you want, what is the meaning of your life. And in fact, very often in the Western discourse, some are opposing spirituality, which is more positive, to religion, which is less positive. Religion is full of rules and rituals and prohibitions. Spirituality is perceived as something which is much more open. And from an Islamic perspective, we need to say two things that are essential. The first is the heart of our religion is to keep our spirituality alive. And what does it mean to keep our spirituality alive? Is to keep the meaning of our life everywhere, in everything that we are doing. So what we are trying, the most important challenge is really this one, to keep the meaning alive. So why is it the most important challenge? Because by definition as human being, an insan, as a human being, we know what is nisyan, which is we are very quick to forget the meaning. And we are very quick to forget the meaning because of the life, our life, it's where we are full of activities and challenges, that we can have degree at the university, that we can have positions. And the point is really this one, is as human being, the very essence of the Islamic message is don't forget. And the third thing that we are asking when we are forgetting the essence of our life is, رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَّسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. God, don't be harsh with us if we forget, because this is the third thing that we are going to do, is to forget. And when we forget, we do wrong. أَخْطَأْنَا نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. First come this dimension that we are very quick to forget, and especially in our modern world, we have so many things to do, so many things that we are involved in, that we are forgetting the essence. And we need to come back to this. Ruhaniyya wa Rabbaniyya, what we have in the Quran, kunu Rabbaniyyin. So you have to be imbibed, you have to get it right. The message should be part of yourself. Meaning by this that to be Rabbani is to be very close to this God consciousness, that we are with Him, piety in the very deep sense of the word. If we start with this, this is where we stop being on the defensive. Why? Because this is where we get the very deep and the very essence of what faith is. Our faith, that when we say, La ilaha illallah, there is only one God. This is the essence of everything. And we have to come to this, that at the end of the day, our belonging to Islam gives us the positive answer to us as human beings, to our being in the world. And in fact, it's wherever we are to ask the essential question. So the essential question is why? And if there is something that is needed in the West, as it is needed, by the way, in the Muslim majority countries, but it's very much needed in the West, is to ask the question why. Not how I can get this, how things are working. The know-how is good, the why is essential. And if you come with the why, this is why you position yourself not on the defensive, but on an assertive way. I'm asking the question why. And the question why is exactly what faith is all about. Our faith is responding to this question, to the question of why I'm here. And why I'm here is the very understanding of the converting our heart. When, for example, the Prophet ﷺ was asking, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qulubana ala dini, who you who are having our hearts in your hand, just make sure that help us just to remain on the right path. This is the very essence of us being Muslim, and when we come with this, we should be able to say, we have the same question, we don't have the same answer. And this is the universality of Islam, is not to ask us to have all the same answers, is to acknowledge the fact that as human beings we will have exactly the same question. So the universality is about the question, even though for us the answers are universal. We acknowledge the fact that the universal message of Islam is telling us from the very beginning, you all have the same questions, we are not going to have the same answers. Why? Because وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. If God had will, He would have made you one community. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كُلُّهُمْ جَمِيعًا. If God had will, He would have made you all believe in one God. This was not His decision. His decision is, you have all the same questions, but you are going to have different answers. And you have to respect this. So this is why, to tolerate diversity is not enough in Islam. We respect, because this is coming from God. But you understand my point? When you start with this understanding of Islam, you are not on the defensive. You are not saying, oh, I am a Muslim and I'm nice. No, I have my questions and I have my answers. So it's not we are not defending Islam, we are coming back to the very essence of life. And you help the West to reconcile itself with philosophy and religion. Our presence should be a question, and our presence should be a reconciliation. To reconcile the West with the deep question of the point is not how it works and why, and why we are doing this in this society to get money. It's why this life, and the very meaning of death, and the very meaning of heart, the very meaning of love, the very meaning of life means, for example, that when we are coming in the industrialized society, we are questioning everything from an ethical viewpoint. everything. Everything has to be questioned from an ethical viewpoint. Why? Because you are responding to the first question. Why? And we respond to this by Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is the very meaning of life. Not only when someone is dying or passing away, when we are living, we understand that we belong to Him and to Him we come back. And as we are between brackets, between life and death, during this life, our answer, our spirituality is to do what? Is to try to be close to Him in any way. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The best among you is the one who is the deepest being in his God consciousness. This is essential for us. So I'm saying this because very often the Muslims, because they are attacked, they are at the periphery. They respond at the periphery. I'm nice, you know, this is my way of being, expressing myself, this is my right. Before responding about the headscarf as being a right, it's an act of faith. You have to come back to the essence, what I'm trying to achieve with it. So respond to the questions that are attacking you at the periphery with response that are questioning from the center. From the center of your spirituality. Why I'm doing this? Because this is my answer to the meaning of my life. So this is why, for example, when you think from where you are, that this is preventing my freedom, from where I am, this is protecting and pushing and helping to nurture my freedom, because this is the way I'm with the one, this is the way I'm living this spirituality. So it's very often the case, you know, if you look at the rituals in any religion from outside, a ritual by definition is acting against your freedom. If you follow a ritual, it means that you have to do everything every day, 5 times a day you pray, so it's against your freedom. Freedom is do whatever you want. To be connected to a ritual is to act against freedom. In fact, if you come and you start the discussion from the center, you should be able to show that praying, instead of being perceived from outside as preventing my freedom, is giving me from within the true freedom. In fact, to pray is to free myself from my ego. So you can see that it's an imposition on my gesture. You don't get it right if you don't understand that it's freeing myself from my ego. So from outside, an act of against freedom is spiritually an act that is promoting. And it's exactly the same everywhere. For example, the discipline that you have in the Buddhist tradition is very, very demanding. But why? Because they are saying, I'm freeing myself from the samsara. I'm freeing myself that is coming back. I will be coming back to this suffering. So in order to free myself from suffering, I have to control myself. From outside, to control is to oppress. From within, to control is to liberate. So this is a discussion. These are elements of who you are as people. And by the way, if you are all Muslims here and people of other faiths, this is a universal message that we are sharing all together. You find this in the Jewish tradition, the Christian tradition, the Muslim tradition, and the Buddhist and the Hindu tradition, if we come to the discussion at the center of our tradition. And if we want to be, and to understand this, as Muslims and Western Muslims, this is where we have to start the discussion. And stop accepting the people who are telling you, look Muslims, we are waiting for you to integrate, when are you going to be, you know, true American and to play and to be visible in a positive way. It's as if you have to be visible, once again, always the same at the periphery. The best presence for the Muslims in the West is to be present at the center of the true questions of life. It's what is the meaning of this. Because at the end of the day, when the Prophet ﷺ left the people of Mecca, went to Hira and was questioning God, asking him, give me the answer. In fact, he wanted a conversion. He wanted to change. I don't like what you are worshipping. I don't like your idols. I don't like you worshipping money. I don't like you worshipping idols. I want something else. There is another meaning. We are here for that. At the end of the day, to come to the true questions. and to be assertive with this. This is a universal message, and it's the true freedom that we are standing for. Having said that, we come now to something which is, so what is the consequence? What are the consequences of that? How this is going to be visible? And it's visible through something which is our ethical stand on everything. So first, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We gave dignity to human beings. So there is something which is from the very beginning in any society, anything that has to do with racism, anything that has to do with, gender inequality, it's unacceptable from our viewpoint. So when we are dealing with the society, for example, the hierarchy that for example, when I keep on repeating, and some Muslims, they think that we're doing this only for the sake of, political strategy to say anti-Semitism is anti-Islamic. We are not saying this only to please the people, whatever we are. These are the roots of our tradition. It's impossible from an Islamic viewpoint to just think about something which is targeting the people. Because you are a Jew, I'm going to target you. In the Quran, we have it clearly that not only there are Ahl al-Kitab, that we have to respect, and then we have to add to this, we're not going to make any difference between anti-Semitism or racism against black people. That's unacceptable. Dignity is for all. لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. So our understanding that there is one God, it's one understanding that there is one humanity, and then it comes to the ground when we are living in a country that we will be at the forefront of anything which is anti-racist, that we are not accepting it. And then we add to this our understanding of, we understand from an Islamic viewpoint that we have laws, and these laws are here to protect us. Rule of law is the first Islamic science, and if you come to the Islamic tradition, you will find that our first science is not theology. Our first science is legislation. It's fiqh. It's how to implement the principles into a society. So we need the law to protect ourselves. So as citizens in one country, in the United States of America, we accept and we acknowledge the fact that we have these laws and we are respecting them. So we have to respect the law that are implemented. The only, and be careful about this, because I was saying is that we are legalists by definition. And once I was saying this, and I was saying this in South America, Africa, and I had a brother who was there, he was supporting the anti-apartheid movement for years and all this, and he said, be careful with this. You have to put a condition in our, and he was right. He was right in the way he was putting it, that we acknowledge that we respect the law. He was saying, if and only if these laws are just, that we are promoting justice, because the laws in South Africa for years were that if you are white, you have some rights, and if you are black, you don't. So you can't just say, I'm supporting the law. So you have also to be critical with the law the way you are critical with culture. In fact, you should always be aware that there are things in the law that you have to consider, and the problem that you may have to deal with the American law or legislation is not really the law or the legal system itself, is the way it is implemented. And this is where we were just talking about this in the other lecture, is be careful, anyone who is trying to tell you that the legal framework is objective and not ideologically driven is lying. It's always ideologically driven. The problem that we have with law is not the law, is who is reading them. And if the powerful are reading them, or the white are reading them, we have what is happening for the black people and the African American people, or the Muslims. For example, I kept on repeating for years in Europe and even here. My first encounter with the United States of America is not the immigrant community of Muslims, mainly was African American. This is coming from a relationship that the family and my father had with Malcolm X. So I came through this. I understood at that point that there is a divide between the immigrant mindset and the African American. And the African American were quite clear on the fact, if you don't get it right, if you don't understand the struggle between blackness and whiteness in this country, and the very deep history of discrimination, that you're not going to get this domination and power struggle relationship. And for Muslims, you are entering in this, willing it or not. So you can now buy the American dream, you're going to make money, dream. That's fine. But at the end of the day, there are people in this country, they are not dreaming, they are just, it's a nightmare because it's a continuous discriminatory process that they are facing. And then if you are ethical, you just can't come as Muslims saying, La ilaha illallah, there is one God, and forget justice for all, and forget the dignity of all, and forget within the community something that is internalized racism. It's there. You can see it in the Muslim community that we are accepting the fact that some are less Muslims than others. And we have two categories. We have, you know, the people who are our people. Of course, we are Muslims, and we have been Muslims for generations. The African American Muslims might be less really Muslims because they are black. And this is something which is pure racism. It's racism. And we have the problem with the converts. So second-class Muslims, in the way that sometimes we expect them to change their culture in order to become true Muslims. So this is where, in our understanding of Islam, when it comes with the center, when we start with the center, and we come to this understanding of the dignity and acting against racism, promoting the respect of the law, if this law is just and not promoting unjust treatment between the citizens and between even also between citizens and immigrants. We also have to be careful with this, because what I see with some European and American Muslims and Canadian Muslims is that, yes, we are talking about citizenship, we are citizens and equal citizenship, but they don't care about immigrants. They don't care about the way that immigrants are treated. We are talking about here the dignity of human beings. And an immigrant, man or woman, is a human being. So we also have to look at the way our country are welcoming or not the immigrants, and sometimes treating them in a way which is unacceptable. Unacceptable. In this country here, some immigrants coming from southern countries, from South America, is, you know, when I was in San Diego, and you heard about all what was said in this controversy in Arizona about the way we can just stop the people. That's not acceptable. That's, as an American, you have to be involved in this. It's not the business of, you know, I was just saying before, one of the main challenges of the Muslims, the American Muslims, is to care about non-Islamic issues. Apparently not Islamic issues, but anything which has to do with justice has to do with you. Anything which has to do with dignity has to do with you. Anything which has to do with freedom has to do with you. Anything which has to do with equality between men and women has to do with you. And if it's not qualified as Islamic, it's universally connected to who you are. So as Muslims, you should be involved in the discussion. Anything which has to do with education, what is taught in our schools has to do with you. Because to be a human being and to have a dignity means you have to get knowledge, and knowledge is education. We keep on repeating, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق, that you have to read and you have to seek knowledge, and seeking knowledge is an obligation for men and women. All that is fine. What does it mean in the United States of America? What does it mean in your university? What does it mean wherever you are? So this is where you understand my point. When you come from the center, in every field you can be assertive, not on the defensive, not to show that quite the opposite. We are assertive with our ethics, with our understanding that there are values and objectives that we want to promote wherever we are. Having said that, this is domestic, this is within the society. But we should not stop here, because one of the main problems, and we were talking about just now, Orientalism and the new empire and all this, one of the problems that we have in our countries when we live in the States and when we live in the, it's the way we look at other countries. And this is why, for example, when we look at the Middle East, it's very, you know, the countries are very, in the United States of America, your government is very quick to put itself on the right side of history. Someone who was in our lecture right now was saying how the President Barack Obama was explaining that it was right to go to support the Libyan resistance, because you can't, if you are an American, be on the side of the oppressors. Thank you. If you look at history, just, you know, Barack Obama talking about such a nice values, but still, who was supporting Mubarak? Who was supporting even Ben Ali? Who was supporting all these dictators that we had in South America and that we had in the region? Who is supporting the petromonarchies? They don't care about democracy, they only care about oil. So all this business that we are promoting the nice values, that's very, very often the case for ourselves. Now, as American citizens, as American Muslim citizens, with all the other citizens, and this is something which is part of our understanding, we should not be Muslims with Muslims in the name of Islamic values against the world. We should be Muslims with other Muslims and non-Muslims and people of other faiths in the name of principles, in the name of our ethics, coming from the center. I'm assertive with who I am, this is the meaning of my life, and then you add to this the ethical understanding, and then you have what is now happening in the Middle East, what is called the Arab Spring. So the book that I wrote about the Arab awakening, I'm refusing these two concepts. I don't speak about Arab Spring, I don't speak about revolution. I think that we are far from witnessing revolutions, and we are very far to get that spring that the people were talking about. The only country when we can see that things are moving because of the actors, because we have today in Tunisia, for example, secularists that are ready to talk with Islamists, we have something that can be a hope, that they are moving ahead. But in Egypt, you heard today that the candidates are now removed and the army is still very much taking over and playing from behind the scene a very, very negative role in the whole process. Where can we see something which is true revolution, that we have a transparent democracy? Where? In Egypt it's not the case, in Syria it's far from being the case, in Libya we are now witnessing tribes, they are armed and they don't want to stop. We have a very difficult situation in Yemen, still the repression in Bahrain. Where is it happening? What is the situation? And still, having said this, and this is why I keep on repeating, we have to be cautiously optimistic. From where we are, we should take a clear position that as Americans, we are supporting democratization and we are supporting transparent governance and good governance in the country, and we are supporting elections, whatever is the result. It doesn't mean that we are accepting or agreeing with all the results, and this is where in our discussion about contemporary Islamic values, we should be critical and enter into the discussion about what is happening in the Middle East. For example, what we have seen is Nahda is leading now in Tunisia. The Muslim Brotherhood got 40% of the votes. We have a movement within the democratic process that is pushing towards Islamist and Islamist, reformist Islamist. Now, does it mean that it's positive because they are leading? We need to come with the critical ethical question. At the end of the day, we are obsessed with the political framework. And this is why I think we have to be very cautious in our discussion. And you in the United States of America, as citizens here, you have to get it right. The political structure is not the complete picture. You need to deal with economy, and you need to deal with South-South relationship in economy. Do we have this? Is this happening? Is this the reality of the Arab Spring, as we call it? When you see, for example, the Tunisians are obsessed with Tunisia, the Egyptians obsessed with Egypt, but there is no international network, there is no regional understanding. And very, very often what we have is this very superficial discussion between secularists and Islamists, as if the one are the progressive and the other one are the backward guardians of the tradition. And I think that we have to go deeper than that. Do we have this discussion? And ask yourself here even, among you as American Muslims, do you have this discussion? Aren't you not too much with your own people and not talking to people from other traditions and other trends? So one of the main challenges for the Muslims will be in the coming future, and it's coming to us. Look at what is happening in Syria. It's coming to us. This divide between Sunni and Shia. It's going to be critical. This is working now, that you have people who are supporting Bashar al-Assad, who is a dictator, because they say it's all against the Shia influence in the region. And you have people supporting the resistance because they are supporting the Sunni tradition, not caring really about the dictatorship, but caring about the tradition. You know, if you see that the Saudi government asked the American to cut the head of the state when they were talking about Iran, it's very difficult, it's complex. So what we have to do is to stick to our ethical principles, but at the same time to get the complexity of the picture. And one of these challenges is really our relationship within the community as Muslims between Sunni and Shia. Add to this, that within the community we have different trends. We have, you know, the reformist, the literalist, what we call the Salafi, we have the Sufi, and there is very much a lack. We are in a very good condition to have dialogue, and we don't. We don't. We are always with the same people. We have our people, our leaders, our references, but we don't have a dialogue that is helping us to deal with this diversity. And there will be no constructive future for us as Muslims if we don't get this accepted diversity and constructing and building out of it to try to get a better understanding of who we are and what are the different trends that we have as Muslims. So this connection with what is happening at the international level, it's important for us. We need to get this understanding. So once again, the center, it's the meaning of life, then our ethics, then in the way we are dealing with our society, and then the way we look at the big picture in the world and to be consistent with our principles. At the end of the day, you belong to your principles. You belong to your principles. It's all good to be patriotic if and only if you don't act against your principles. It's all good to be an American or whatever you want to be, but with the parameter that is helping you to come to respect your principles. And this is where, as citizens, we should be much more assertive, much more confident with who we are and what we want, and don't be naive with what is happening in the Middle East. The things are very complex. I'm just mentioning in the book, I don't want to come to this now, I'm mentioning in the book many things that are not said in the media that we knew before, the way they were, the cyber dissidents were pushed and they were trained to go for something which is changing the regime. It's very deep, it's not new, it's something that started in the beginning of the 2002, 2003, 2004, and the experience of Eastern Europe was quite important in the whole process. We need to study, we need to do the job and to get a better understanding of what is happening and to try to find ways to implement our ethics as Muslims. This is a challenge. At the end of the day, what will be our contribution in that field? Just one thing to give you the floor, and I think it will be more interesting for you to discuss than to listen to me, because some are starting to sleep in front of me. And it's not halal. You know that sometimes it's halal, of course, to sleep, but it's not ethical. And you know that sometimes things that can be halal and ethical. Okay, you get that? Okay, just one thing that I don't know if you part of all this process, because I'm looking now for students and professors and even Muslim scholars working on different fields, because we started, I wrote a book a few years ago called Radical Reform. So now it's okay? Better? I'm talking to those who were starting to sleep. So, I wrote a book called Radical Reform, Islamic Ethics and Liberation. And the book was really coming back to the fundamentals of Islamic jurisprudence. And what I was trying to do in the book is to reassess which kind of reform is needed and in which way we have to deal with authority in Islam, and to go from adaptational reform to transformational reform, understanding that at the end of the day, my main concern is not to adapt myself to the world, but is to change the world. For example, if I'm saying I'm a Swiss Muslim, if I'm saying I'm a European Muslim or an American Muslim, I'm not, some of my fellow citizens could expect from me to integrate, and I don't like this word. And I think I don't want to integrate. What I want is to contribute, is to my presence should be an added value to the society. How can I do this? In all the fields. So one of the proposals was really to make the scholars of the text and the scholars of the context working together. What does it mean? You have scholars that are only working on the Quran and the Sunnah, the Ashuyur that we know, but we have other scholars who are working on medical sciences, for example. And if you want an applied ethic in medical science, you can't today have the two knowledges together. You need to focus on one, so you will take from the text and you will take medical doctors and make them work together. And I was asking many questions in many fields: education, gender issue, men and women, medicine, environment, arts. This is what, and many people came to me and said, that's an interesting book, but the problem is that in your book there are more questions than answers. And I say, of course, because it's exactly my point. My point is that I don't have the knowledge in all that field, so I'm asking questions, because if we want deep answers, we should try to put the right questions. And now the project is to translate this book into reality. So we opened a center between Qatar and Oxford, exactly dealing on this. It's a center for Islamic legislation and ethics. So we are going to work on 11 fields. But I want you to understand this because it's connecting, in fact, exactly what we're experiencing in the West and what is experienced in Muslim majority countries. And in 11 fields is we go be working on education, on arts, environment, economy, medicine, food, politics, manhajiyya, which is the scriptural sources also, to have something which is specific, and psychology. So there are 11 fields. What we are trying to get now is exactly this. Scholars who are specialists of the text, who are working on these fields, and people who are working on one of these 11 fields, and we want them to come with, because what we want to raise is the right questions in that field. Which kind of questions do we have? So any one of you who has one of these fields, is one field of interest, let me know in order to connect you to the center, and we will have a very important website where it's interactive, where we want the people to come with their question, and we will have seminars where we'll have 8 scholars, 4 scholars of the text, 4 scholars of the context, coming together with one question. And we want you to come with applied ethics, a fatwa that is specific. We want to create a kind of a school of thought dealing with these issues, where we're not only asking the scholars of the text to come with an answer because they don't get it, but scholars of the text working together. This was just to make you, to give you a sense that there is something which is connected to all what I am saying here. It's applied ethics, is in which way we have to contribute to some of the questions of our time, when it comes to environment, for example, when it comes to gender question, that many people are saying one of the main problems that we have in Islam is women, and I'm saying, I'm sorry, there would be no problem of women if we don't have a problem of men, as you know, so I think that we have to tackle the issue together. Okay, that's your turn now. Thank you. You know my fatwa, which is, but just stay alive, or
So we'll open up to question and answer, inshallah. We don't have no cards, so if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll call you out and you can stand up and talk. Do you want to take it or should I?
Yes, go ahead.
So you said you have a problem with the word integration. I understand part of it, but could you, like, I guess, explain a little more the difference between, I guess, integration of Muslims as opposed to, I guess the difference in your words, integration of Muslims and us in whatever culture, and us existing in each culture. So, can you kind of get what I'm saying?
No.
So, like, on one hand, where integration is kind of highlights the us attempting to defend or reconcile our beliefs with another system that's, in a sense, superior as opposed to existing. So I guess your problem with integration, complicate that more.
No. Okay, I hope I got it now. But no, my problem with integration is what is the meaning of integration for the people who are talking about this. So the perception is this one. You are in the host country, you came in the host country, this country has a culture, and this country has rules, and as someone who is coming to a host country, you have to integrate within the society. Meaning by this that you have to integrate within the culture and acknowledge the fact that there is a specific legislation, and you abide by the legislation, and you accept the majority culture as yours. It doesn't mean that you are assimilating, as some are putting it and some are understanding the concept of integration. And my point is, look, this was a progressive concept 50 years ago. If now I come to the United States of America and I look at you, it's not a host country, you are at home now. So anyone who is telling you you have to integrate is recreating the fact that it is a host country and that you are integrating into something which is unborn here. So anyone who is coming to me and saying you have to integrate to Switzerland, I say, what are you talking about? This is my country. So first is a mindset. And more importantly, you have to understand that when the people keep on talking about integration, they are creating a mindset that you are still the other. Even though you have the passport, you have to feel that you are not really in your country. And it's creating a sense of minority citizenship. What Wilhelm Schinkel, a Dutch sociologist, is talking, he's referring to it as something which is a moral citizenship. So you have a formal citizenship with your passport, and you have a moral standard where you are expected to have this kind of qualification or features to be a good citizen, and you have to prove this. So for example, in the Netherlands, they're asking you, which language are you talking at home? So it's not of your business. I talk what I want to talk. If I want to talk Arabic and this is my language, as long as I'm teaching and my kids are getting the Dutch language, it's not of your business to know what I'm doing at home. So this is a way you look at me as if I have to prove that even at home we speak Dutch. So it's not a requirement. So this is what he called a formal, I would say informal citizenship, which has to do with the sense of belonging. So my point is to say, first, I'm not in the host country. Second, this is my country and this is my culture. So when someone is telling me integrate to the American or the Western culture, I say, I'm a Western by culture, I'm a European by culture. So I keep on repeating to the people because there is an ideological game in this. It's not by accident that you have the people keeping, all this campaign with Sharia now, that's in the bills and all this, is creating a mindset like, look, these Muslims are not really Americans and they want to come with their specificities to impose this onto us. Who is this us? Us. Who is them? Muslims. And us is to recreate a sense of an identity where you are creating the other. So it's the old mentality that we had during the colonial period, is creating otherness. And this is where You know why the people are asking, why with your discourse you are so dangerous? Because exactly, I'm just breaking this. This, polarization is something that I don't accept. Even when the Muslim scholars were talking about, where are you here? Are you in Dar al-Islam, in Dar al-Harb? So some people are saying, oh, it's no longer Dar al-Harb. Talk about it as Dar al-Da'wah. Dar al-Da'wah is the same problem. Dar al-Da'wah is as if you are not really in your country, but you are here to control the people. So you are recreating the polarization by changing the term. And I'm saying, no, I'm sorry, the whole world now is Dar al-Shahada. Dar al-Shahada, لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. That you are bearing witness to your message before people, even in Muslim majority countries. So I don't want this kind of polarization. So I refuse the concept of integration exactly for this, saying to the people, the success of integration is to stop talking about integration.
So it's as if people, proponents of integration are kind of creating a myth of a static culture, of a true culture, while you're arguing that there is a true culture that it comes to. I feel like you're saying there's this hint of like evolution, of development.
I didn't say that right now, but I agree with what was exactly.
Okay.
So you are building in a better way. So yes, I agree. Yes.
Why did the Muslim Brotherhood break its pledge not to run a candidate for president? And does that mean that the security forces and the Brotherhood are butting heads?
So you have the question and the answer. No, I think it's a fair question, because they said no at the beginning for months, and then even Abdel Mun'im Abul Futuh, who was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, was fired because he said, no, I want to run for presidency, and then they enter into the game. I think that there are many parameters. Two things that I would say are important. There is one thing that is, after the election, many people from outside understood that the Salafi were, in fact, we were, in the West, we were talking about 60% of the voters, which is completely wrong. There is a push, and from within and from outside. You should know that RAND, the RAND, they released a report showing that the months before the Egyptian election, and you can go on my website, I wrote about this. I'm trying to keep on writing articles every week about this situation. In the Salafi equation, it's quite interesting just to see that between it's not the governments, but the organizations, the Salafi organizations in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, they invested more than $80 million just before the election. And these people who had no, they were even against democracy, saying it's kufr and all this, they just entered and they got 20%, 24 before and then 18%. And then they put the Muslim Brotherhood in a new situation, which is they had the religious credential, or they had the means to question the religious credential of the Muslim Brotherhood. And on the other side, they had the army, so they were in between. So this is something that at that point they were not thinking that how they can deal with this. And it might be that this situation pushed them in a way to think about having someone, because they were not very happy with who else can represent them. And the second thing is really the relationship with the army. And I think it's an open secret. It's known by everyone that they have talks and they have discussion with the army. So is it to challenge Omar Suleiman? Is it to work? I think that they are, in fact, for the last 3 months, at least, the Muslim Brotherhood are in a very difficult situation, just to find their place in the game. So, and many people are saying that it's there is a lack of consistency in your politics. We know that there is a great deal of pragmatism in the way they deal with the situation. But with what happened yesterday and today in Egypt, it's very worrying, very worrying. You know, I have been banned from the country for 16 years. I wanted to go last July, and my government, the Swiss government, who protected me from going when the first time they let me know that I was banned from the country. In fact, they told me last July, don't go, the army is controlling still, and you have to wait. And they were quite right. I think that the situation today, it's very bad, and I don't see the Muslim Brotherhood have. I think that we have to be cautious. The Muslim Brotherhood is not only one opinion. They have conflicting opinions and they have trends. We knew this from the generations, but now I think the leadership is in a situation where there are many questions to be asked. But this is my interpretation, not knowing, you know, why they are now really going that direction. I don't have the final answer to this. I'm just guessing from the whole political landscape. Yes?
From the Zappel here for your time. A couple things I noticed, I was there for your Chicago speech as well, that you repeated. You said that at the end of the day that we belong to our principles. And then another thing you mentioned recently is that we don't have dialogue to deal with our youth diversity together. As students, as people that we're gaining knowledge, we're gaining ability and opportunity. What do you suggest? Like, where do we start? Because I mean, it's like a global problem. A lot of these problems that you're finding, they're relatively cyclical. Like, where do we start to make this change happen and have that imperative?
That's a good question, and I think that you have to ask yourself first. You know, I keep on repeating that on that field, I haven't seen any, student or teacher or professor or whatever, or scholar, being courageous if we are not clear as for the beginning of the whole process, what I was talking about now. So the spiritual dimension. And I mean by spiritual dimension not only praying during the night. I mean by spiritual dimension protecting the meaning and the objectives of things that you are doing and what you are doing in your life. So it's really, for example, you are in one university, why are you here? What are you trying to get? Are you trying to get a degree? Are you trying to get the acknowledgement and recognition by the people around you? Do you want title? Doctor, professor, sheikh. I think I'm serious about it. I'm serious about it because we are in a community where we are idealizing people and we are very much in love with titles. Very much. And in fact, these were means and we end up looking at them as ends. So we have to start with this. So you as a student or as trying to get more knowledge is really the starting point is to respond to this question for yourself. And then you can't do everything and you can't be knowledgeable in all the fields. At one point you have to ask yourself in which field am the more efficient and it's the more interesting. And on that field you have to be specialized. Specialized doesn't mean that you don't care about the art. Sorry, you need to get as much knowledge as you can on all these dimensions. The comprehensive understanding, the comprehensive approach is important. So you need to have a specialized approach in one field and then to have a comprehensive understanding for more. And then you go ahead with this and try to stick to your principles and to be active. One of the reasons why I accepted to come before I was banned from this country at Notre Dame University, that when they called me to come as a professor at Notre Dame University, they told me something which was exactly what I'm doing. They wanted an activist scholar. Activist scholar, meaning scholar, you are in your field and you have the knowledge and you do what you can to get more knowledge. And at the same time, you are activist, you are connected to the city. I accepted to go to Rotterdam because the proposal at Rotterdam was you teach at the university diversity and citizenship, and you are working with the municipality at the grassroots level with people. So the point is for students, it's all good to get knowledge. Ask yourself why you are getting knowledge. How do you bring this knowledge to the city? How do you bring knowledge to the society? How are you effective in the society? Just to get knowledge, to get the title, that's nothing. But to come back, and even when you are a professor, when you, for example, the people are saying, oh, because you are a public figure, you are less academic. I say, that's silly. That's a silly argument. You need to get both. You have to be public, you have to be vocal, and at the same time try to be the best in your field. And then to choose what is your field. And please, if I have to say something to a student, try to gain knowledge as much as you can, and never forget to be courageous. Meaning you speak your mind, even before an exam. Or even during the exam. Yes, because there are people who are selling their mind and their intellect just to get the grade or the mark. I'm sorry. I myself am teaching students. The only students that I remember are the students that are challenging with knowledge. Okay, I don't agree that this is, but they are courageous. And I think that this is where life is an exam. So when are you going to be courageous? Yes?
One thing that we're facing a lot right now, especially with Sharia being such a buzzword, there's legislation in 27 states on banning fighting
27 now.
And so one thing that's kind of happening is on campus we're being faced with this question of, or what in your opinion would be a good way of presenting Sharia, in a really comprehensive manner, or presenting it in case we were just asked how to believe about it?
Yes, that's very important because when I was in Oklahoma, some of the leaders came to me and said, look, what they are saying is completely wrong about Sharia, and we have to just to show them and say, okay, let us sit together and say, okay, tell me what you know about Sharia. I said, look, if I have to listen to what you are saying now, they are going to win the battle. Because one of the main problems is that the Muslims don't even know how to get a deep understanding. So if you take the book, What's the Muslims and the Future of Islam, I have one chapter which is, how can we understand Sharia? And my understanding of this, and in radical reform I'm doing the same, trying to get a better understanding of Sharia, is we should be very cautious not to reduce Sharia to what the fuqaha, so the jurists, the Muslim jurists are. Because when you are dealing with a field, of course you get the definition of your field. So you define the concept depending on your field. So for them Sharia is Islamic law, because they are dealing with implementing the law. But Sharia is much more than this. And Sharia, for example, if you look at what Ibn Khaldun wrote a book that is a Sharia and law, it's really connecting. Sir Hindi, the Sufi, was connecting the Sufi tradition with Sharia, because Sharia is in fact the way towards faithfulness. It's a way, it's a path. It's how do we understand our principles in the light of the objectives in order to be faithful to the principles. So the law in the light of the objectives in order to be respectful of the principles that we have. So Sharia is much more a set of objectives and principles to be understood in the light of these objectives, to be faithful to the Islamic principle. And it's not a closed system. It's not. So I was challenged, this was one of the main discussions that I had at the beginning, like with someone like Sheikh Yusuf al-Qardawi, when they started talking about fiqh of minority. And I have lots of respect to what he gave to the Muslim community, even he was there when we launched the center. I took a lot from him, as I took from many, many scholars, but on some specific points, and especially when it came to understand our situation in the West, I disagreed with some of the perceptions, because he was still, and as so many scholars living and it's normal. We just have to acknowledge the fact that they are not living with us in our society. he was, when he was talking about minority and saying الأحوال المسلمين في المجتمعات الأخرى, the situation of Muslims in other society, it's as if we are in other society because the natural society of the Muslims is where they are in majority. I'm sorry, it's my society. I'm not in an other society. I am in my society. And the point here is important because from a citizenship viewpoint, I'm not a minority. I'm not a minority. So how am I going to use the concept of Sharia when I'm not a minority? So I'm just saying, I'm referring to Sharia. For example, some Muslims, when I was talking about the hudud and saying it's not implementable, in the name of Islam it's not, some were saying you should say it's not implementable in the West because we are a minority. It's as if you are sending a message to your fellow citizens in Muslim majority countries, you can go ahead, implement it. So what is this message? We are not dealing with number or figures of majority, minority. We are dealing with principles. Can we or not do that? To come to the answer of this, sorry, is to say, for example, when it comes to Sharia, when I mean, when I have to speak about my situation in the West, is to say, for example, it's not a closed system, it's a way, it's not a closed system, and in that way, anything which is good, in the society where I live, it's part of my Sharia, because my Sharia is an open system. So, for example, the discussion that I had with some of the scholars is to say, look, I was talking in Europe, I was saying in Europe, and we can say exactly the same in the States, you have law that are telling you that whoever you are, whatever is your social status, whatever is your color, you should be treated equally by law. So, equality before law. This is my Sharia. I don't have a problem with this. So, I don't want to implement Sharia as an alien system. My Sharia is open to take everything which is good when it comes to dignity, and this is why I don't have a problem with this. So, this understanding, all these people who are behind this campaign, and they have something in mind. They even say, even if we fail in the way we are promoting the bills, in fact, we are creating an atmosphere. And for us in Europe, we know how it works. We know that first they work on fear and understanding that Muslims are coming with alien concepts and they want to implement Sharia. I say, I'm sorry, wherever I am and I can just have a freedom of conscience and freedom of worship, I'm at home, so it's my home. Sharia, it's not something which is alien. It's already implemented in so many things. Anything which is telling me respect nature is my Sharia. So when, for example, Paul is telling us how much we have to care about global warming, it's us. Welcome. You get the point? So I think that we have to be very deep in our understanding and not come with a very narrow understanding. And the problem is that some Muslims are repeating this very narrow understanding of implementing Sharia in the way it's alien to the West. Anything which is Western cannot be Sharia from the Sharia. That's wrong. That's not the understanding. So I think that we have to go deeper, not only for our fellow citizens, but for ourselves. For ourselves. Why? Because when I say that this law that is telling me and imposing onto me to treat any human being equally, this law is part of my Sharia. It helps you to feel good in the society, not alien to the society. It's you. And also to be able to say that many principles that are part of our Sharia are much more respected in the United States of America than in any of these Muslim majority countries. That you feel then you are at home, because there is something here. The principles, Shatibi said, Shatibi and before him Al-Juwayni, and they were saying you have to protect deen and nas, your religion and your personal integrity and progeny and all this. It's much more respected here than the Muslim majority countries. So this is where we come with better definitions. Inshallah. Yes? I will come to it. Yeah, go ahead.
This humanism, which is almost inherent in the faith, which requires us to widespread, economic justice for humanity is impossible within a capitalist paradigm?
If you want my personal answer, it's impossible. I think it's impossible. This is what you're okay. I thought the opposite. I thought that you were hoping that I would say yes. No, you are very happy that I say no. Okay. So on that I am on your side. I don't buy at all ethical capitalism. No, I don't. And I think that this is one of the problems that we have in the first trends of what we call political Islam in the beginning of the 20th century. They were all very close to what came later in Latin America with liberation theology. It was the reading of the poor that we had, with Gutierrez, with Leonardo Boff, and all these people. I was myself in touch with them. I went there and spent time in Brazil with Daniel Del Camara. I wanted to understand what they were saying, and what I got from them is there is no way to be a consistent Christian in our world if you are not on the side of the oppressed. There is no way, if you are consistent with your principles, to resist this free market where there is no ethical, there is only interest, and there is only exploitation. So how do you resist to this? And you see that the first trend that we had at the beginning of the 20th century, and they were resisting colonization, they were resisting by saying we should resist the economic system. Now what we have with some of the Islamist trends, and among them the Muslim Brotherhood, is that many of them, as opposed to the first tradition, are now accepting anything which has to do with the free market. They are ready to deal with the IMF, they are ready to deal with the World Bank, and even if you see about what is happening with Turkey, I have been following Turkey, and there are many things that are supporting. I think that they are doing a good job against the army, against corruption, and they still have to do many more things when it comes to freedom of expression within the country. But there is one big question, is that they are welcome in the West because they are integrating the economic order and competing on the same ground. Is this the future? Why don't we see with the so-called Arab Spring, countries dealing South-South new relationship, to deal with the multipolar world of today and not to keep on this Western and this binary vision and polarized vision? So I think that this is why we have to ask the question. From an Islamic viewpoint, there is only one way to put more ethics in economy, and it means to reform and to rethink anything which has to do with the capitalist, economic order. But so far, this deep critique of the capitalism is very much coming from the Islamic discourse with Islamic economy, Islamic finance, and the problem is that it doesn't really come as an alternative to the system. We'll take because, and I will come to you, I try to balance men and women, brothers and sisters. That's good, isn't it? It's one sister, one woman for we men. Now, so far this is what I'm doing, so I will rebalance this. Go ahead.
Just to bounce off that last question, you spoke earlier about democracy and democracy promotion in sort of a positive light. How can we, as Muslims, support what is seen as democracy promotion, what is so linked to this system, this economic system that so unevenly sets up countries? And how do we work for the values that are inherent in democracy that are similar to values that are inherent in Islam, with that when democracy is so linked to this unequal economic system?
Yes, I think by exactly starting with what you are saying, the problem, we are looking at the world and what is happening with the uprisings in the Middle East, and we only look at them with a political angle. we don't reconnect this with the real questions, and the real questions are economic interest, economic stability, and the market as such, the free market, and what is behind it. And I think that we don't understand what is happening in the Middle East if we only think that it's a political game. And you know, this all this discussion about the domino effect of, you know, that's fine with the people. That's true that the Egyptians were, you know, encouraged by what was happening in Tunisia. But at the end, it's not a domino game. It's much more a chess game based on geostrategic and economic interest in the region. So it doesn't mean, and I think that we have to connect the two, but it doesn't mean that we have to undermine our support to the democratic values with the more complex economic understanding, where we have to come with a critical discussion. I'm trying to do this in the last book, trying to really come with the true challenges, and one of them is this one, to reconnect the discussion about not corrupt and transparent democratic process with challenging the economic order, the regional dynamics when it comes to economy and when it comes to geostrategic interests. I think that this has to be done. But this is where we have to be quite clear that we also need to come with something that I also added in the discussion, is I'm doing this discussion on the democratic values connected to the economic dynamics exactly the way I should do it in the West. We are in democratic societies, and you as me, we know that today our freedom is less. Our rights are not respected, that we have technocrats that are deciding for us. They are not coming, you know, what is happening in Greece, what is happening in Italy, what is happening in Spain now. These are people coming, they were not really elected, and they come to save the world, to save the country, only on the economic basis. So the political democracy or the liberal values are undermined by the liberal economic system. So I was just explaining in the other university just before that we have to be very cautious. The meaning of liberal is not the same when we speak about liberal values and liberal democracy and liberal economy. And the liberal economy is acting against the liberal values that we are supporting in democracy, and we have to reconnect this. So this discussion is a very important one, and we should do this not by talking about the Muslim majority countries, but by talking about America. You should, as Americans, be very much aware of what is happening in your country, but to show, I'm sorry, don't try to sell us that the American democratic system is a perfect system, and that no, there are so many things that are going wrong in this country because of the economic system. Because now we are much more protecting the banks and the transnational corporations than the poor people. When we had the crisis in 2008, this was the reality of the situation. So I think that really we have to come with a more global critique of the system. And I'm sorry to say that I don't see this the Muslims are so willing to show that they are democrats, that they are nice, that they are kind, that they are not courageous enough to come to a critical discussion of the global order, the global economic order. And they keep on repeating, you know, we have the solution to the economic crisis. It's the Islamic economy. A superficial answer to a complex question. It's as if when you are going to stop, you know, have to come with this technique that we have in Murabaha and all these techniques that we have an alternative system. I think that this is very superficial when it comes to your question. But let us start by doing it here, and also to show that we need an alternative. We need something new in our discussion about the democratic values that we are supporting. So someone, you were asking.
I got complimentary answer the last, but I have another question. Can you answer Sharia question that was asked from the other side?
Yes.
I think there should not
Why the opposite? I'm not trying to integrate Islam with it, but my understanding of Islam is that it's integrating everything which is good within the society. So I would say it's the process is from where I am with my universal values, I'm integrating, I'm not integrated.
Doesn't that mean that we are anything that are common across the board?
Of course.
And that is what the integration I see.
No, no, integration doesn't mean this. Integration is you have a society and you integrate within the society and you accept what the society is. My position is quite different. It's really to say, I believe in some values and the system has some values and we see that we have common and shared values and that's it. Don't ask me to integrate. I'm not less myself to be more an American.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the shared values is the integration. Right.
Yes, but what I'm saying, just to make it clear, I'm not against this, that it would have been possible in the past, it was a progressive and positive. Now it's over. It's over. Don't tell me that I'm not at home. Now we have found in this society the common values that we have. So integration, it's a concept of the past. Now is, for me, with my value that are the same that we can find in the system, how I can contribute to the future of the society. So I'm not against the fact that, of course, the historical experience made us encounter another set of values, of course. Now, how this was articulated and still is articulated is a question of a historical experience. I don't have a problem with this. But the point is that by keeping on talking about integration, we are polarizing the debate. It's as if they were a society with its system and citizens coming with their own system, and they are not yet integrated. I think this is over. This is not right. Yes, and then I come to you.
Just a follow-up on the Sharia question. I love what you said, but it was a bit too broad. So if you can just give us 2 examples I want to ask you about, and just kind of give me a clear answer. For example,
Thank you.
Because it's just, the concepts are
broad for you meant unclear.
Yeah, because the concepts are brilliant, but I like to kind of be specific. For example, I had this issue of Jewish being convert, and after all, I was a convert, a Christian convert. So the law of the land was prohibiting you from killing a convert from Islam to Christianity. This goes against the Sharia, at least at the surface level. So what are we going to do there? Second example, for example, the Quran would be testimony to women and inheritance. There's equality. You speak about democracy and equality between men and women, but there's a discrepancy there. So how can we reconcile the Islamic law with the secular and liberal law in the West?
Okay, I will try to give you clear answers, not broad answers. First, about conversion. This is exactly the problem that we have if we don't get a deep understanding of the diversity of views that we have in Islam. First, when Hukm al-Ridda, that someone cannot convert to another religion, was for a while, that's true, the majority position of the scholars. But it was not the only one. The first one who expressed something which was a bit different, Sufyan al-Thawri, he expressed the fact that, in fact, if you come back to the tradition, our understanding was that the Prophet, peace be upon him, never killed someone because he or she changed his or her religion. And by the way, in the book, The Messenger, in the footsteps of the Prophet, I'm giving some examples of people who changed and they were not killed. So he was coming with an opinion and others were coming with an opinion. At that time, the people who were changing the religion, they were changing the religion in order, as you know, people were betraying in times of war. So they were taking the information and going, and then Man baddala dinahu faqtuluhu was understood in a very specific situation of this, and then al-fariq al-jama'a, the one who is leaving the jama'ah. So there is an Islamic opinion where you are not going to kill someone who is changing his or her religion, and that the Prophet, peace be upon him, never did that. So even when, for example, we had a discussion in Egypt, and then we had it here with the Washington Post and the Newsweek, they have this on faith. I was asked about this, I responded, and Sheikh Ali Gomara from Egypt confirmed what I was saying. And what was quite interesting is that he said, no, we don't kill someone who is changing. It's possible in Islam, according to the deepest or the best understood tradition. And the Council of Sharia there sent an email to the newspaper saying, no, he was misunderstood. This is not what he meant. And he responded saying, no, I meant it. So why am I saying this? Because there is a discussion among scholars, and you have to take a decision. You have to take a position here. And my position from an Islamic viewpoint is that you don't kill someone who is changing his or her religion in the name of Islam, and this is not the only position that we had in the Islamic tradition. So, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because there is something which is in the Islamic legal system in Islam. There is something which is a flexibility. You know that there is diversity and flexibility. In the name of this flexibility and this diversity, you can always find your way in another society, which is now your society. And you are not adapting, but you are finding your way because there are positions that are, and then you have to take yourself a position. If you, for example, you think that you don't have to kill and it's permitted to change your religion, that's fine, it's your law. If now you don't think it's right, and you think we have to kill, from an Islamic viewpoint, what it is said that in a state of necessity you are not going to implement, and especially what the scholars were saying is that you are not going to implement this in a situation where you are in minority, which is coming from the first scholars. So in one way or in another, you have a position that is respect the system where you are. I would respect the system because I think it's right. You can change your religion and nothing should be done. You would say, no, I'm not going to act because by definition the system is imposing onto me not to react, so I have to respect this. So this is one thing. The second thing is about inheritance. And once again, there are the verses that we have on inheritance are clear-cut. قطع الدلالة والثبوت, so meaning that you have to implement them as they are. Having said that, for example, in anything which has to do with testimony, we have also many scholars from the very beginning saying, be careful, 2 for 1 was in a situation where the woman was not knowledgeable about the issue. But when it comes to medicine, if she is a medical doctor, when it is her field, 1 woman equal 1 man. And this is not new, it's as old as the beginning of this translation of the legal law. So, for example, for me, and this is for me the right position, I would say I don't have a problem with this because this is Islamic. When a woman had to testify, we have to take her testimony as it is. So there is one Islamic position. There is diversity, there is flexibility, and you can find your way. Inheritance, it's exactly the same. The situation is that there is quite a consensus that for a girl, she will have half of a man. In the legal system here, you can decide the way you are going also to distribute your money, and you can always find a way to give to everyone according to your own will. Something which is very close to the Islamic way of distributing your inheritance. So this is something that you can play within the rule of the society to find a way to respect the Islamic thing, and you are free to do it if you want to do it. Now, you also have a perception on understanding that you need to deal with the objectives when it comes to this, and you have to ask yourself, am I protecting the Islamic philosophy that in a specific situation, the men, because they got the double, they have to take care of the woman. So you have to be very clear on upstream the principles and not only to be formal in implementing the principle. Because very often the sons are taking the double and they don't respect the duties, which is you have to take to look after your sisters or look after your family. So this is also something that we have also to look at the principles and the objectives. So I think and I hope that you can get from this very specific answer something which is there are many understandings, many ways of dealing with the legal system, and at the same time what we have is to understand the system itself, and the latitude within the system is also providing you with a way to find something which is very close to what you understand as being Islamic. So we don't really have a problem. You know, when I started to write the book, To Be a Muslim, and then the book was, it was published by, it's not the same book, but it was The Muslims and the Future of Islam. The starting point of my discussion was exactly this, to find the points of conflict. And then at the end I say, the flexibility of Islam and the latitude within the system is making us finding our way, even if we don't have the same understanding of some of the Islamic principles. Even in this situation we can find a way. Even if I think that the hudud are not implementable, and I am dealing with a Salafi who thinks that they are implementable, the Islamic legislation is telling him or her that in this situation, in the West, when you are a minority, you don't have to implement. So he will find his way or her way in this. My position is it's not implementable in the name of Islam, because the conditions, because all what it is said about the objectives are not there. So we can't do that. Yes?
You talk a lot about injustice that takes place against Black Muslims and from different cultures. Can you comment on the injustice that takes against foster care children, especially in the U.S., and the lack of Muslim participation in care for these children that do not have proper caregivers? And because I feel that Quran and emphasizes a lot on adoption and taking care of kids, yet I will see a lot of Muslims taking a stand in it. Because I feel if non-Muslim children are being abused and under foster care, then Muslim children are too. But in the U.S., they're under the care of non-Muslim families, and then they're raised with not Muslim tradition and teaching, and then they're not taken care of, they're not treated just. And
I understand exactly what you are saying, but you are making the point, and I completely agree with this. There is a lack of awareness and the lack of commitment. It's as if we are in the, you know, because anything which has to do with fostering, it's misunderstood by many Muslims. Say, oh, it's not Islamic and we can do that, and so, because we don't exactly know the answer, and because we think that mainly there are non-Muslims that are involved, we are not dealing with this. But I think that we have, it's wrong. So what you are doing by asking the question is to raise the awareness of Muslims that this is something that is touching. That, by the way, even if Muslims are not really in it, even if it was the case, and it is not, you have Muslims that you need to be involved in this because it has to do with injustice, with undignified treatment. We have to be involved in this. And this is where, for example, we are not really campaigning. It's not the priority. The problem also what we have with the Muslim mindset today is that very often all these things are, oh, this is not our priority, this is not our priority. Now we had this campaign against forced marriages, and many Muslims said, we have bigger problems. So I'm sorry, for anyone who is just dealing with a daughter or a son, because it's going to, we have to deal with this. So what you are saying, things that are dealing, related to family, forced marriages, honor killing, these are things that are very much in the West. But for us, we have to take a stand. We have to be to be committed to say no to all these things. Domestic violence. You know, I had a sheikh when I was talking about this saying domestic violence is un-Islamic. He told me, oh, why do you talk about this? Because at the end, domestic violence is mainly coming from people who are drunk, and it's not really Islamic, it's not really us. So I'm sorry, if you know what is happening in the Muslim families, within within the society, that's not acceptable. Domestic violence with or without alcohol, without, it's wrong, so we have to take a stand. So this is where I think that your point is very important, is this lack of awareness in things that are happening within the family and abuses and all these things. This is where, if you are in the field, it's very important to come with facts, figures, and a better picture of what is happening. We should stop this state of denial that we can find within the community. And lack of commitment to something which is perceived as, oh, Muslims are not involved. It's as if, I'm sorry, the problem with Muslims is that they think that if we don't have enough Muslims involved, it's not Islamic. It's as if Islamic is only for Muslims. It's exactly the mindset that we have about Islamic schools. Islamic schools are not only schools for Muslims. Islamic schools are schools with Islamic principles for all. This is not the way we look at it. So I think that this distortion in our mind should be changed. I don't know, it's up to you. You can take 3 last questions, is it okay? How many? How many questions do you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, wow, 8, 9. So, you know what? Are you ready for the 9? Yes, but can you have them short? I take all your questions and I answer it in 5 minutes. Or go ahead. So we start like this, from right to... Go ahead.
I have some comments concerning the brother question about the economic and capitalism system was asked. And you know, in Islam, there's not much variety and philosophy in these economic system. Thank God, Islam has very specific rules in all aspects. When somebody dies, when some people trade, share together in the trade and things. And I think the most or the main essential problem for the economic situation in the world is the interest system, is the capital system. And by the way, as a fact, the most steady and not affected banks in the world and economic systems are the Islamic banks or the Islamic country wherever they apply Islamic rules. These, for fact, they were in the last economic big problem. They were less affected or less lost banks and economic situation. And the main problem, all this, okay, yeah, okay. I think they have to do with interest and not interest. Isn't the interest is the main problem in all economic situations in the world? And Islam have that solution for forbidding dealing with interest in the banks.
So, yes, what's your question?
For many times, those who want to pursue Islamic studies or some other certain community in some way have institutions that allow going abroad to study Islamic studies like they serve, but then there's limitations that come with that in terms of you might not be properly equipped to serve the community you want to serve in, or should students seek out to study Islam within the United States, within the United States, the Islamic programs that exist?
Yes.
You recently criticized Dr. Cozy and said that he is dividing grants too much, or he should be uniting it. Basically, my question is, if you were the president of France, what would you do?
I like this question.
you mentioned earlier that there's a significant difference between the study of Islamic science and the study of the theology of Islam. If you could elaborate on that.
Say it again. The study of what?
The study of Islamic science and the theology of Islam.
Some of the contemporary issues that they were raised, like for instance the apostate issue and the adultery issues and some of those and many issues like that. What are the basic principles in Quran? The reason I see and understand that if you look at the Quran, Allah says in Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 136, very clearly, those that believe and then they advance in their history. Then they believe and then they go back to their history. Never, ever in the Quran, there is not a single verse that says anyone should be killed. So, my question is that what are the problems as a Muslim Ummah that we are facing, that we are taking sources beside Quran, which is Allah says this is the only guidance Allah has given to the humanity, and that's what whole prophet you should follow and you should learn with. And how come we are going so much away from that, and that's why we are facing all this controversy.
Okay.
Okay, simple question. Yes?
How do you see the terrorist and awakening affecting the American
points, please. How to get a hold of the association that you spoke about in Qatar. This is number one. Number two, do you agree on the fact that domestic violence and mental cruelty, in the family has a direct impact on, just injustice on a bigger scale in our societies?
Do I agree that what?
That domestic violence and mental cruelty that takes place in families, in general and particularly Muslim families, has a great connection with the injustice that takes bigger scale, and how to start, teaching for example, our children to overcome this. If we're suffering from it, we're in the midst of it.
I think it's okay. It's a question, or it's just to tell me that I have 5 minutes? So it's a conflicting message. Yes. The last one. The last one. The last one.
Yeah, can you explain in more detail why you think the Arab Spring is an inefficient movement?
Something I really like is that before finding my place, I need to find myself. But how would you explain that to Muslim youth that are growing up within the society? How do they find themselves and not consider the place that they're in?
Okay, so I think, can you hear me? Doesn't work. At 12 o'clock it stopped. It will be difficult for me to speak very. Can you hear me? It's okay if I speak like that?
Good. It's good.
Yes.
So you don't need this?
No.
For your, from your stronger than the battery. That's good. What you were saying about interest, I think that once again, what you are repeating here is something that we keep on repeating, and it's true that the Islamic system is, or the Islamic understanding is touching at the roots of the capitalist system by saying no speculation, no interests, no usuries. All this is fine. Now, does it mean that knowing these prohibitions, we have found an alternative system that it's not only adapted within the global economic order? I think that this is where the question is. And I think that we have to do much more than what we are doing now in coming with ethics in economy, and not only to have niche of so-called Islamic economy within the global order. So there is one chapter in the book where I'm quite critical of this by saying we have to be very cautious. We have to question the philosophy of the whole system, and not to try to find a window within the system that is confirming the whole system.
It's the same standard base that we discussed about. Interest or no interest. That means,
No interest, that's fine. But we have lots of economists who are saying what we are doing now in the name of Islamic economy is still interests with new name. No, it's not anyway. It's not anyway. It's important. It's not. Be careful. We were told by the Prophet ﷺ one day he will change the names and keep the bad.
no, whatever they call it, usury, they call interest, it'll be the same thing. Because we look at the same point.
No, I agree in the principle, but I think that we have to go further in the implementation and the understanding of it. So I think that we may agree. On the Islamic studies, here you know, I myself was facing exactly the same thing when I first did my PhD in philosophy, and I am coming from a very religious family, so I was trained at home, and then at one point I was asking myself where to get the Islamic knowledge, and I had no institutions in the West at that time. So I went to Egypt, I went to the Jazat with the scholars, I spent time, you know, one-to-one courses. I was privileged to do this because I had no institution. Now, it depends how you go, it depends how you come back. So if you are equipped, and I always think you have to walk on two legs. One is really the knowledge that you can get here in the society and the knowledge of Islamic principles, and you have to merge these knowledges in order to be efficient where you are. So some are going there to train and they come back completely disconnected from the reality. They are even more just to show, or because they were trained in such a way, they come with a very bad understanding of the challenges, and some are coming back with a very good understanding. You have some of scholars who came back with a good understanding of what we are experiencing. So if you can find an institution that is responding to your request, the knowledge that you need here, you can do this, and you can get the knowledge here. You can do that, and it's possible. Now you have some institutions that are doing a good job. If you feel that there is something which you need more about, you know, your language, it's difficult to get a good level of Arabic in this society, you want to go there, be equipped. If you have time to do this, if you can do it, go for it. If your intention also is to come back and to try to transform, to translate this knowledge into the country. So I don't have one answer because it depends on who you are, where you are, what is your level, what you want exactly. But there are things that you can get here, lots of things, lots of knowledge, lots of books that you can now read in Arabic or in English in this country, and you can get a very good level of understanding your religion. But if now you have time to go and to spend time, it's always a good experience. It's always a good experience. I still have now, these hours of studying with scholars on very specific issues that they are shaping your mind. They are shaping your mind and helping you to get this knowledge. I think it's interesting. No chance for me to be a French president, by the only fact that I'm Swiss, I won't get that. But yes, I think that in fact, when it comes to the secular system, I wouldn't touch the French secular system. I wouldn't change anything. My discourse to the French president and the French establishment, not only him, on the right and on the left, I think that the problem is not the law, the problem is the way it's implemented. I say I don't have a problem with what is how do you read it and how do you have a double standard when it comes to implement this. I want this law to be implemented equally. I think, of course, that there is one law, now two laws that are problematic, is to ban the headscarf in the schools. I think that my position here is quite clear. It's against Islam to impose into a woman to wear it. It's against human rights to impose into a woman to take it out. Let her decide. It's not a good business. And this is the true secular system. Anything else is just playing with symbols. And then the second position is, let us abide by the law the way they are written and try to implement them equally and to stop Islamizing the socio-economic problems in France. The suburbs have nothing to do with Islam. It's a socio-economic reality. They are discriminated, they don't have jobs, they don't have houses, there is racism, structural racism. I would go for this. I would try to implement a social vision, a political vision, and not to keep on repeating that the problem is cultural or to ethnicize the problem. This is what the French are doing now because they don't have an alternative in terms of social policy. So I have been repeating this, and if you go on my website, the day before yesterday I published a kind of synthesis just before the election about the way I see the discussion. It's in French and it will be in English the day after tomorrow, inshallah. So the difference between Islamic sciences and Islamic theology. No, when we speak about theology, in fact literally means discourse or speech on God. It's very, very, very much the dimension of an aqidah. And in fact, in the mainstream Islamic tradition, we don't really have a discourse on God. We can't say only but what he said about himself. So we don't have a true theology, even though you have now discussion about the Sifat and Asma and all this. But this is not the real first Islamic science. The very first Islamic science that was very much the reality in the Islamic tradition has to do with implementing the rules, is fiqh. And then inductively from fiqh, we went to usul al-fiqh. So it's how do we extract from the rule, from the text, the scriptural sources, the rules, and how do we implement them depending on the context. It was much more, what you have in the Jewish tradition is called the difference between orthodoxy and orthopraxy. In Islam, we are much more orientated into orthopraxy, is how do we implement it. So this is what I was saying about the Islamic sciences. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have sciences that are dealing with the scriptural sources. Ulum al-Quran, Ulum al-Hadith, Usul al-Fiqh, they are very much dealing with the text and categorizing the knowledge. But it's not really theology. It's not really discussing the being or God as a being. Because you, and then you stop. you don't have to talk too much about this, because the reality of his presence is known to your heart. Describing his being is unknown to your mind. So this is what I was trying to say. So what you are saying, it's interesting that if you come back to the Quran, you are right. If you come back to the Quran, there are verses in the Quran where it's quite clear that we cannot kill someone because all this, it's the verse that you are mentioning is right. The problem is that in the Islamic tradition, we don't only rely on the Quran. And we have to be cautious here just to say the strongest Islamic position is not to use the Quran and to forget the Ahadith. It's to use both and to show that with both we have an understanding that it's not going towards this direction. Why? Because if you say, as some people are coming to me very often and say, we are, and some of the progressive Muslims today say, I don't care about the Hadith. Okay, the Hadiths are disputable. Everything is disputable. I only care about the Quran and I'm following the Quran. And if you go that direction, you are going to see that it's problematic. And to these people, I say, okay, I have one question. To all the people who are telling me I'm only following the Quran, and your position by trying to avoid talking about killing, we just rely on the Quran and there is nothing in the Quran, for example, about stoning, when some people are saying there is nothing in the Quran, they are right. Nothing in the Quran is in the Hadith that we have that in the prophetic tradition. And to the people who are telling me, I'm just following the Quran, say, okay, I have one question. Show me in the Quran, how do we have to pray? And the discussion is stopped. Why? Because you don't have anything in the Quran about how do you have to pray. The way we pray is only coming from the Hadith. And praying is the first practical pillar of Islam. So it means that you cannot rely only on the Quran. The fact that you are doing Allahu Akbar, or saying Allahu Akbar, and the way we all pray, and it's a consensus, it's not coming from the Quran. So from the very beginning, when it comes to praying, the 5 prayers per day, we agree that we have to rely on the Hadith. So you can't avoid the Hadith. Now the question is, that's true that we have to rely on both. Now how do we understand the Hadith in the light of the Quran? This is where we need to come in this discussion about something which is stronger than that for me, is to look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, his biography, the ahadith, and to show that from this you can't come and say we have to kill. That some scholars were using both and coming to another conclusion. And I think that this is stronger than only relying on the Quran, because if you only rely on the Quran, you are going yourself to be caught in conclusions that are very dangerous, because you are just relying on the Quran and not accepting the hadith or referring to the hadith as a source of legislation. And the hadith are the source of legislation. Now we have to be quite clear as to the priority. The priority is the Quran. We deal with the ahadith, and we need to come with an answer which is supporting or relying on both. I would say this is stronger, or at least more consistent. Justice, equality, and homosexuality, which is once again a big question in the West today, and especially in your country. And in the name of equality, some people would say we should accept and even promote equal rights for homosexuals in our society. And this is why I told you the very beginning is to be very clear with our understanding of the very meaning of life. So how do I understand this? And here, when I'm saying that I'm with God, I'm saying that, you know what I was saying about the fact that it's not enough to tolerate people, I have to respect them. Why? Because in my understanding of to be a Muslim means that I have to respect the divine project. And the divine project is He made us, tribes and nations, in order for us to know each other. There is a divine project. In my philosophy of life, so in my aqidah, there is a divine project, and the divine project is to say a family is a man and a woman. So homosexuality is something which is not promoted, and it's considered by the consensus among the ulama, it's haram. So I'm not going to undermine this in the name of what is going later by saying, no, my philosophy of life, my aqidah is telling me, so the philosophy that I got out of my aqidah, which is my creed, is this is the way I deal with family, and I'm going to protect that. So within the society, and there is still space in the United States, in any modern society, to say, this is the way I deal with family. For me, family is this. And then this is where I'm going to promote equal rights for families, understood like this one. Now, how are we going to deal with homosexuality? And this is my position, that I haven't found anyone who is able, in the name of Islam, but also in the name of human rights, to say it's wrong. It's to say, look, from my position is, what you are doing with homosexuality is wrong, and I don't like it. I don't agree with what you are doing. Now, who you are within the society with your rights, I respect who you are. So the position of principle is, I respect who you are, I don't agree with what you do. Don't ask me in order to show that I am open-minded to come as far as to say, welcome, I like what you are doing. So, and I'm not asking, expecting from anyone who is not sharing my views to like what I'm doing. But he has to respect me in who I am, and I do whatever I want. So what you do is your business. But now if you ask me, as a philosophy of life, to come and to support you to get the same rights as a family, I say, I can't. This is against my conscience, because this is not the divine. I can't do this. If you ask me now that as a man and a man, as a woman and a woman, you should be able to adopt kids, and I can't. This is against. So you are acting me against, and there is something in our common constitution which is freedom of conscience. So in the name of my freedom of conscience, I can't go as far as this, and this is my project. So this is where you are setting the scene of who you are in the society and what are the limits. And I'm saying this with something which is important, because the Muslim presence in the West, you also have to ask yourself, what is your role? And some, they are so obsessed with being accepted that they don't understand that sometimes their position of principle are good for the society. At the end of the day, are you going to, with principles that can remind this society that there are things that are essential for us, or I just want to be accepted by the society? So I want you to understand this, because when I'm saying this, and when the people are saying, telling me, or attacking me on this, I say, look, first, I'm not the only one to say this. The Dalai Lama is saying that homosexuality should be condemned. The Pope is saying this. So these are their philosophies. Then you have to respect that. Now, what they are saying with the human being, we are not saying that we are going to kill you, but we are saying you have to respect us as much as we are respecting your being. And then my position of principle is to help this society to understand that it's not only a question of rights, it's also a question of being, essence, and philosophy of life. And I think that I'm here for that. I think that this is also my role as someone who is a believer, saying, I'm not going to be, pragmatic, and so pragmatic that I'm forgetting the essence, that I'm forgetting that there is something which is a divine project. At the end of the day, we are going back to Him, and this is what we believe. So we are telling the people around us, you have to respect that, and not only, the practical translation of what equality is, and whatever is possible is possible. We don't think. I don't. This is important on many things. We are talking about homosexuality, but I will also talk about modesty. That's so important. We are talking about something which is that I'm free. So the way I deal with myself, the way these all things that we are promoting in the name of freedom should be part of. There is not only one way to be free. So this is something which is important. So the awakening, how is it going to impact on the Western Muslims of the long run? I still don't know what is happening and how it's going to impact on us here. But I think that because there are still unfinished revolutions, and we are still in the process, I think that we have, at least now, to make it clear, and once again I allocated one section in the book to show how much, when the people were in the streets, the first question was asked, is it not going to be Islamic? And then when we assessed what was happening, it was quite clear that these people were not doing it in the name of Islam. They were doing it in the name of dignity and freedom, and they were acting against dictators. But I was responding to some of the journalists that were questioning me at that time. Don't forget, they are still Muslims. It means that we are cherishing the same values. So as Muslims, they want dignity, they want freedom. So don't forget that they are Muslims when they have the same value, and call them Muslims when they are perceived as the other. So when they are the same, it's as if Islam is not there. And when they are not the same, oh, it's Islam. So we have here to come with a clear discourse that at the end of the day, the Muslim majority countries, what they want is exactly what we are cherishing. They want freedom, they want dignity, they want stability, they want well-being as something which is essential in their life. And for us, it's a discourse that we have to promote. Now, what is going to be the future and which way it's going to impact, depending on the elections, how it's going to happen, it's still too early to assess that, because we don't know what is going to be the future. We can end up with controlled democracies and free markets that are completely under control. And it comes to the last question that I had, and I will take it with this one, which is, it was not the last question. It's why do I think that the Arab Spring is so inefficient? I hope it's not exactly what I think. I think it's not efficient. I think we are far from getting an Arab Spring. And I think that there are things that are very interesting, and if we are not going to come back to what happened before. And the most positive thing that we had with the Arab Awakening is this sense within the populations that they are able to throw away dictators and to do something non-violently. And this is very important. Now, I think that if you look at what happened before, what is happening now, and what are the perspectives and the prospects for the near future, I still think that we have to be very cautious. We have to be very critical of what could happen. And just the news coming from Egypt, the situation in Syria, the situation even in Libya. We went there, we so-called liberate the country, and if you see what is happening now, mainly we are protecting geostrategic interests and art in the country much more than we are protecting people. And I think that we have to be cautious in that way. So, quickly, 3 questions that I have, and I will end here. So the new system, do we have a new system, and how can we talk about a new system between communism and socialism and the capitalist system? I don't think, from anyone asking this question, yes, I don't think that if you look at what we have today, we can just rely on one system, the communist system, or the communist system, or the socialist system. I think that we have to be critical with the global order today in the name of our Islamic ethics or our shared ethics, and this is why I think that we need to come with ethics in the economy. But I don't see one system now that is a model, an alternative model for us. There is nothing. We always repeat it. The old tradition of Muslim scholars was to repeat that Muslims are between the capitalist and the socialist system. They are for the private property, but at the same time they want the state to play a very important role in order to avoid exploitation. That's all fine. But today the world is so complex. Transnational corporation is the virtual economy. It's so dense, so complex that coming with very simplistic statements like this one is not going to help. We have to go deeper than that. And this is why, and this is part of the project that we want, is to have the economists at the highest level of expertise in this, and to come and say what could be the alternative. If we rely on applied ethics in economy, and we can use anything which is said about avoiding interest, trying to find other ways of dealing with economy or the economic procedures, these are things that are still, we are very far from getting an alternative system. I don't see these things. what you were saying about what is happening within the family, and to make it clear that domestic violence and mental cruelty, and I like the fact that that you are putting this. I was in Washington 3 days ago, or 4 days ago. I was in Washington, and I went there for the women's shelter. And we are talking about domestic violence. And in my talk, I was trying to make it clear that we have to stop talking only about domestic violence with physical violence. There are many other ways to have a formal and informal violence within the family. And this is unacceptable. We have to take a step by saying, you can't carry on talking about family in an idealistic way and dealing with a community. You know, we all know in this room how much we like talking and we idealize the Muslim community and the Muslim family. And we are not talking about, so much distress, so much suffering within the family for women that are facing mental cruelty. They are facing something which has nothing to do with Islam, which sometimes is coming from culture, sometimes is coming from wrong understanding of Islam, and sometimes it's wrong, it's right, just unacceptable. So we need here to show how much this is impacting over the Muslim community. But more importantly, even if it has no impact on the Muslim community, it has an impact on an individual, on a woman, and this is not acceptable. And to start with by saying domestic violence and violence against women, anyone who is using the Quran, and this is why, for example, this is how we can use it now in the other way, because you have in the Quran, so it's in the Quran that you can beat your wife, and you have people quoting the Quran, say, okay, come now to the Sirah, the prophetic tradition, show me where the Prophet ﷺ beat once a woman. Never. And he's your model. So because you are following his model, you can't do this. It's against Islam. Domestic violence is anti-Islamic. And this is where I want my main concern for the Muslims is not only to think about the consequences, it's to think about the principle. Very often we are so much in a situation of inferiority complex and we don't feel good with ourselves that very often when I speak in gathering like this one and we have Muslims and non-Muslims, Muslims are happy with what I say when they see that non-Muslims are also happy. You get the point? The point is an inferiority complex, that you are so lacking confidence in what you have to say that, you find it good. Many, when people are inviting me to come and they are non-Muslims, they come to me and they say to me, they tell me at the end of the lecture, oh, you know what? The Christians were happy. Exactly the same thing. They say, what is the point? We are not here to please, and we are not here just to think about the consequences of what we are saying. It's a question of principle. Are we serious with our principle? So what you are talking about is, like you were saying about, all these discussions that are taboo in our community. When it comes to violence, when it comes to sexuality, it's as if, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, all the question, and even Aisha radiallahu anha was praising the women of Ansar because they were able to ask all the question. We arrive in 2012 and we see American Muslims in this society, stop it, don't talk about this. It's as if sexuality is taboo. So many women, so many men are suffering in this society of this formal and informal violence. We need to be very clear that these are questions that we have to tackle, that we have to discuss among ourselves, and this is the only way to be serious about well-being. Islam is all about salamat al-nafs. Salamat is spread peace around you. Ifshu salam baynakum, this is spread peace, but get it inside. Because you are not going to spread anything if you don't have it inside. And salamat al-nafs is, what is salamat al-nafs? Salamat al-nafs is when your needs are finding the way to be satisfied. Intellectually, salamat al-aql is, I have question, I have answers. Salamat al-badan is that my body has needs, I need to find a way to satisfy it. And not to deny that my body has needs in a halal way. Because some are going to say, yes. So maybe is it halal as a prayer, so is it haram, it's haram. So for Qatar, the way we can, can have just, it's a way also to be in touch with us. But any one of you who has a specific interest in one field, just be in touch with the center, and we are now creating fields, 11 fields where we will have scholars, and we'll have a forum on the website where it's possible to have quite specialized discussion and trying to spread around in an international net, with international networks, a kind of philosophy of dealing with a mindset, a school of thought, which is very rigorous with the Islamic principles, but very clear that we need to be connected with the knowledge of the world the way it is, and the sciences the way they are today. So this is something which is important. And the last question to end with was your question about how could I find, how is it possible to, or is it possible to speak about finding who I am in this society? You know, in the Quran there is one verse that you have to meditate, and it's very strange, because in fact Allah is saying something which, you know, at the beginning it was very simple to get, and then you understand what happened. سنريهم آياتنا في الآفاق وفي أنفسهم حتى يتبين لهم أنه الحق. I was starting to translate in French. After 1 o'clock, human languages are coming to me. So we will show them our signs in the horizons and in themselves again, until they get the message that this is the truth, until they understand that this is the truth. If you look at the structure of the verse, it's quite interesting, is that we are going to show them our signs in the horizon, so it's far. And then it comes close. It's as if you go outside and you come back. Okay? And then you come to the starting point of the revelation. That Allah, God is calling the Prophet, and the first thing that He's telling him to look at is not his heart straight away, it's the horizon. It's all the horizon. Telling him, look at the horizon, it comes to you. And then you have another verse telling you this, which is important in the relationship that you have with God. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم واعلموا أن الله يحول بين المرء والقلب. All you who believe or who attain to faith, respond to the call of God and His messenger when they call you to what gives you life. And remember that the knowledge of God is between you and your heart. Close. Okay. So when you get this, this is where you answer your question. You don't talk about who I am as if you are in a void. The questions that are coming from within this society, and sometimes the fact that you are attacked, you know that it is something which is very important. You will never get strong spirituality if you are not attacked. This is why all the messengers were attacked. Why? Because when you are attacked for who you are, you come back asking yourself who I am, what I am, why I'm here. So there is no spirituality, and this is what you find in the Quran. Do you think, do the people think that they are going to be just to say, I believe, and they are not going to be tested? You are going to be tested out of your faith. So this test of adversity is helping you to come to the center. Look at the young Muslims in the West now. They are attacked on many ways, on their morality, on their being, on their origin, on their being. So they have this. So the horizon are talking. Use the horizon to say, okay, all this is over. What is happening? Who are you in this? What is your freedom? Are you going to follow? Are you going to be like the other? Are you just following, you know, the mainstream, or are you coming back to yourself? So sometimes this pressure, this attack, could help you to come to, let us discuss now about who you are. What is true freedom? What is your being? So, I don't want to talk about being out of the environment. I want to use the environment and all the questions that are coming out of this environment. And you maybe you were born in this country, or you are raised in this country, or you have spent I don't know how many years. All the people who are here, myself, I was born and raised in Switzerland. All my own personal story becomes my school, from which I will draw some lessons in order to be able to talk to the people from here. So this is where you understand now the other verse that you find in the Quran. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ألم يجدك يتيما ألم يجدك يتيما ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى وجدك ضالا فهدى وجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر. You have in the verse saying that God is saying, we find you, you were lost, He gave you direction, you were orphaned, He gave you refuge, the other way around, but this is what He's saying. فأما اليتيم, that because of your history, now you should not forget the orphan. Meaning by this, because you come from this history, because you experience it, don't forget the orphan, don't forget the poor. Meaning that your experience as a young, before being a messenger, is helping you as a school to help now, with one difference that you have to add. The revelation is telling you, use the past to build the future. This is what we have to do. This is what we have to do, is to use our own experience. This is why when Malcolm X was dealing with the world, at one point when he realized that Elijah Muhammad was lying and cheating at him, he stopped and said, I will come back to the ghetto. My home, I'm coming from there. This is where I should be, because this is the knowledge. So where if you go to the Muslim majority countries to get the Arab, the Islamic knowledge, you come back here, and this is where you have to implement that. This is your own life, is your own experience, which is your own school, and you use this. So this is the way we have to deal with the young Muslims here and the not so young Muslims is, okay, the environment is important. Now we will use the environment to ask you the right questions. And out of this we understand why the Prophet ﷺ was so close to the poor. He was loving the poor because he went from this. He experienced it. So when you are an American and you know this society, you know, we were talking about the best scholars that we can have here in this country, the people that we are naturally following. Why are you listening to me, by the way? You're not listening to me because I'm coming with, you know, lots of knowledge that all the hours that I have spent to get the knowledge of Islam, that's fine. You can feel that it might be some knowledge there. But the point is not this. The point is that I'm talking from your own experience. You can see in what I'm saying, oh, he got it. He's coming from, we are experiencing the same thing. I'm sharing with you the same story. When we were talking yesterday, I was with Sohaib Webb. He's an American. He knows how to deal with this. He's even using your words as young Muslims living in America, which I don't. I can't. Too old. But the point, I'm not American, by the way. But this is very important. So the way you translate this, and then you use the experience, you use the culture, you use all this, and you come to the center. You come from the periphery, and you come to the center. So the discussion about the center is not to start at the center. Be careful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet was always starting with the periphery to come to the center. He started at the periphery, having as an objective the center. Unfortunately, we have some scholars, they start at the periphery and they stay at the periphery. And you have some other scholars, they start at the center and they don't come to the periphery. You don't know. You listen and say, wow, that's great, mashallah. And you don't know how to implement that. Because it's completely, you know, it's in the void. It's far from our, so you have to combine the two, inshallah. Very long answer to some important questions. So what do we do? Dua and finish, okay? So you want to say something? Yeah. I want to thank you for staying so long. Come to me at the end. I want to know why you were laughing. No, but it's a joke. Okay.
Jazakallah khair to Dr. Tariq Ramadan for coming here so late at night and answering all the questions. And Allah reward him for coming here and sharing his knowledge. And I want to give it to Basa to say our president for MSA to end us with some closing remarks.
First of all, I want to apologize for all the delays and for all the confusion that was going on. Inshallah, I really want to say thank you guys for coming and for staying and putting up with all the time changes and all the things and that was going on. Also, I want to thank Tariq Ramadan, Dr. Ramadan for coming and still making this event possible. Even I'm pretty sure he was tired. He went from the airport to the event. Allah reward him. And then they'll allow us to take from what his talk is and apply it, as he said, to our daily lives and in essence change the surroundings around us, and that we are able to become better human beings and follow the example of the Prophet. With that, I would like to say to Allah for coming, and I'll end up with a prayer. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار واجعلنا من الصلاة من ذرية ربنا وتقبل دعاء ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم الحساب. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان